found out my wife and her best friend were planning to frame me for cheating so she could leave me. I always saw myself as a pretty average guy, nothing special, nothing extravagant. Growing up in a small town with hardworking parents, I was raised on values of honesty, loyalty, and perseverance. I followed the expected path, graduated high school, went to college, and landed a stable job. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was comfortable. Then, my world collapsed. It started with my wife, Stella. We met in college during our senior year. She was ambitious, majoring in business management, with a clear plan for her future. I fell for her, hard. She was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, beautiful. We shared the same values and dreams. After 3 years of dating, I proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet moment in our favorite park, but it was perfect. We married the next year, and for a while, everything was great. But then, subtle changes crept in. Stella's job became more demanding. Late nights, unexpected meetings, and an increasing obsession with her appearance. New clothes, gym sessions, constant hair and makeup routines. At first, I brushed it off. She said she just wanted to look and feel her best. I wanted to be supportive. Then, there was her phone. A month ago, my phone mysteriously disappeared. I remember the day vividly. We were grocery shopping, and I realized I didn't have it. When we got home, it was nowhere to be found. Stella was oddly calm about it, insisting I just replace it and move on. Her reaction felt off, but I didn't push. I got a new phone and let it go. That was my first mistake. As time passed, Stella became more secretive, whispered calls, hurriedly closing her laptop when I entered the room, stepping outside to take messages. One evening, while she was out, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our shared computer. Buried deep in the drive was a folder labeled with a random string of numbers. Inside, I found messages between Stella and a man named John, her high school sweetheart. The messages weren't explicit, but they were intimate. They reminisced about old times, made plans to meet. But that wasn't the worst part. Also in the folder were conversations between Stella and her best friend, Cindy. They were plotting. Not just an affair, something much worse. They planned to frame me for cheating. The missing phone? Part of their scheme. They were going to plant fake evidence, fabricate messages, destroy my reputation, and make it look like I had been unfaithful. Stella wanted a clean break, without guilt, so she could be with John. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. The woman I loved, the one I built a life with, was orchestrating my downfall. And for what? A high school romance. For days, I played along, gathering evidence, screenshots, recordings, files. Then, I overheard Stella on the phone with her mother. Her mother was in on it too. They were discussing how to manipulate the situation, how to make sure I looked like the villain, how to integrate John and his children into our home once I was out of the picture. It was a full-scale betrayal. I knew I had to act before they did. First, I contacted a lawyer. Then I started subtly planting seeds of doubt in Stella's mind, acting clueless while keeping her off balance. Then came the final straw. One night, Stella stumbled home, reeking of alcohol. She was agitated, mumbling about how things weren't going according to plan. She didn't even notice me standing in the doorway listening. The next morning, I confronted her. I told her I knew everything. She froze. No denial, no defense, just stunned silence. Then, she tried to backpedal. "Shed break things off with John," she said. "We could fix this." It was too late. I moved out the next day. But then, the bombshell. Stella was pregnant. She insisted the baby was mine. I refused to take her word for it. I demanded a paternity test. She broke down, accused me of not trusting her, pleaded for another chance. Then John called me. He was furious, accusing me of ruining Stella's life, blaming me for her actions. Then, the threats started. If I didn't drop the paternity test, if I didn't take Stella back, I'd regret it. He warned me that Stella was fragile, that if anything happened to her, I'd have blood on my hands. It was pure manipulation, but it only made my resolve stronger. I waited for the test results, my mind racing through the past few months, replaying every red flag I had ignored. Then, the clinic called. The results were in. The baby wasn't mine. Relief. Anger. Vindication. I was finally free. I cut all ties. I changed my number, moved to a new place, and began the long process of healing. Stella tried to reach out, apologies, excuses, even threats, but I was done. She had tried to destroy me. Instead, she destroyed herself. I started noticing little things that didn't quite add up. Stella, who had never shown much interest in our finances, suddenly became obsessed with them. She began asking about our savings, investments, and insurance policies. At first, I thought she was just trying to be more responsible, but now I can't shake the feeling that there was something more sinister at play. Then there's her mother, always hovering, always meddling. Looking back, I realize she's been pulling the strings all along, pushing Stella towards John and subtly nudging her away from me. Was this her plan from the start? To break up our marriage and push Stella into the arms of someone she deemed more suitable? As I wait for the paternity test results, I feel like I'm trapped in a nightmare. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my future, has been turned upside down. I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who's watching me, who's plotting the next move. I promise to update you all as soon as I have the results. Until then, I'm just trying to stay afloat. Update 2. Hey everyone. Things have been chaotic, and I needed to make sense of it all. The call from John, the tension of waiting for the paternity test results, it was overwhelming. But then I realized I had overlooked one person in this entire mess. Cindy, Stella's best friend. Stella and Cindy were inseparable. I never thought much of it until now. I remembered stumbling across some old messages between them, and on a whim, had transferred a few to my phone. Back then, they seemed like harmless conversations. But now I see them for what they really were, a blueprint for betrayal. Cindy wasn't just aware of John. She was actively encouraging and facilitating the affair. She was in on it from the very beginning, and that made her just as guilty as Stella and John. I knew I had to confront her, but I had to be smart about it. Cindy is cunning. If I wanted the truth, I had to corner her. I called Cindy, keeping my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me. To my surprise, she agreed to meet right away. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a neutral ground, away from familiar eyes. The moment we sat down, I cut to the chase. I know everything. Her face paled. For a second, she looked like she was about to deny it, but then something shifted. She realized there was no point. I had her. She started talking, her voice shaky at first, but soon the floodgates opened. It all started innocently enough. Stella reconnected with John on social media. She had been venting to Cindy about how our marriage had lost its spark. Instead of encouraging her to work on it, Cindy played the role of the enabler, pushing Stella toward John. And when things escalated, Cindy became her accomplice. She covered for her, arranged alibis, created fake girls' nights so Stella could sneak off with John. And when guilt started creeping in, Cindy reassured her that she deserved happiness, even if it came at my expense. But the worst part? They planned to frame me. Cindy admitted that they had discussed planting fake evidence of an affair to make me the villain. That way, Stella could be with John without the shame of being the cheater. The baby's paternity wouldn't even matter because it'd be the bad guy. Hearing it all made my blood run cold. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated betrayal. Cindy wasn't just a bystander. She was the puppet master, orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Then, just like Stella and her mother, Cindy resorted to emotional blackmail. She pleaded, crying that this stress would be too much for Stella, especially now that she was pregnant. She begged me to consider the baby's well-being. It was the same manipulative tactic I had heard before, and I wasn't falling for it. I cut her off. I'm not dropping the paternity test. I need the truth. She tried to argue, but I stood my ground. I told her I never wanted to hear from her again, and walked away, feeling a strange sense of relief. The full picture was finally clear, and I knew exactly who I was dealing with. Update 3. This is it, the moment of truth. The paternity test results came back yesterday, and everything became crystal clear. Stella, John, and I were all present when the results were read. John, unsurprisingly, looked indifferent, like he knew he had already won. Stella, on the other hand, sat with her head bowed, her hands clenched together, waiting for the verdict. The result? The baby wasn't mine. It was John's. John's reaction was infuriating. He looked smug, almost pleased with himself. Meanwhile, Stella sat in stunned silence, as if the reality of her choices had finally sunk in. For a moment, I felt relieved. The weight of uncertainty that had been crushing me for weeks was suddenly gone. I wasn't trapped anymore. Stella's lies had been exposed, and I was free. If the baby had been mine, I would have still divorced Stella, but remained in the child's life. But now there was no reason to stay. My decision had been made for me. I turned to Stella and, in a calm voice, told her I would be sending over the divorce papers. Her eyes widened in shock, like she hadn't expected me to be so resolute. But I was done. Done with her. Done with the lies. Done with the manipulation. She tried to say something, but I didn't stick around to listen. There was nothing left to discuss. As I walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I want to take a moment to thank all of you. Your support and guidance helped me navigate this nightmare. It's been a difficult journey, but knowing I wasn't alone made all the difference. I've accepted a job offer in another city, and I think this is the perfect time for a fresh start. I'm ready to leave this chapter behind and embrace whatever comes next. Thank you again, everyone. I couldn't have done this without you.